Hi, answering questions from medical writers who have just entered the writing industry. Today's question is, how do I write clearly? This is a question which I often think about, and I have often thought about earlier in my career as well. And every time I think of this question, I like to flip the question and ask myself, how do I not confuse the reader? Writing clearly seems like somewhat of a nebulous concept, so I like to simplify it by asking myself, how do I not confuse the reader? And today I'd like to share a few thoughts on how that can be achieved. First is to realize that with any medical writing piece, there are always action items for the reader. Medical writing is not for the purpose of entertainment, and so after having read something that a medical writer has written, there are certain expectations of the reader. Those expectations could be approve the drug versus don't approve the drug, clear the device for usage in patients versus don't clear the device, prescribe one medication versus prescribe another, change my lifestyle versus stay the same. These are all objectives and action items that a reader is expected to take at the end of a piece written by a medical writer. So it's important for us as medical writers to clarify in our minds what those action items may be, even though sometimes we may not explicitly spell out those action items within the written component itself. It's important to keep those in mind and make sure those are being addressed. That's the first rule of how we can stop confusing the reader. The second is to describe an overview or describe exactly what the article or the document or the slide deck or any other deliverable is going to cover right at the beginning. It's never a bad idea to open a writing piece by saying, today we're going to cover X, Y, and Z, or this specific deck or this specific document is going to describe, is going to illuminate you on this, and that areas of knowledge or information. On the regulatory side of things, every document begins with a well thought out and highly extensive table of contents. Whereas on the non-regulatory side of things, there is no specific formalized table of contents in most cases. So it's important to define exactly what the document will contain before leaping into the document itself. That's the second method that we can use in order to keep things clear and not confuse the reader. The third important aspect to keep in mind is to differentiate and separate conclusions from opinions and commentary. Opinions and commentary can either come from us personally, or as medical writers, we could be transcribing opinions and commentaries handed down to us from key opinion leaders, which could make it into the final piece that we're writing. However, those opinions and commentaries sound like conclusions, but they may not be the actual study conclusions or scientific and medical conclusions of a clinical study or a preclinical study. So it's important to write down what the real conclusions are based on the available data, and write down what the opinions and commentaries are based on our own personal feelings or what's been handed to us from others. And find a way of keeping those separate in the document so the reader knows what is being derived from data and what aspects are coming from someone's feelings or opinions or insight and experience in the field. So to summarize, 3 things that we can be doing to stop confusing the reader. 1, keep the action items for the reader in mind and write to address those action items. Describe an overview of what the piece will contain and differentiate conclusions from commentaries. So think about that, and all the best.